Thank you for joining us today. This is the first video of 109 videos. This video is pretty important because you need to have the right mindset before you start. And the second thing is you need to understand what is this video is about. You have to understand the big picture. It's going to make your journey way more efficient if you understand exactly what are you doing. So first of all, my name is Kuzzat. I came to the United States in 2008 as a refugee with no English, no money, and no college degree. Back then I had a 10-month-old baby and my wife. Almost my first 4 years in the United States was so difficult that I was working paycheck to paycheck, working 80 hours a week. I worked as dishwasher, waiter, cashier, butcher. And my last job in 2011 before IT was I was a package delivery driver for Amazon. I hated end of the months because I know it's time to pay rent. Every month I would get overdraft protection fee. It was very difficult for me. And back then in 2011, I had 2 kids. And as a failed husband, failed father, I felt miserable about myself. Going to college was not my option because my English was broken and I didn't have money to go to college. So I heard that people were learning coding and breaking into tech. This was like my genuine thought process. I said, Kuzzat, you're a freaking loser. What do you got to lose? If you're a loser, you have nothing to lose, right? So I was like, okay, if you're a loser, you have nothing to lose. At the same time, I said, where do I want to see myself next year this time? I said, if I keep delivering package for Amazon for another year, probably next year this time, I will be still delivering package. I said, I don't want to see that. It's painful for me to see doing exact same thing next year this time. I said, you know what? I'm going to give a shot. I have nothing to lose. And if there's even 1% chance I will succeed, 1 is greater than 0. I talked to my wife. She supported me. And I started my journey for IT. I started learning coding. And in the beginning, it was difficult. But after 7-8 months, I went to market, look for a job. And I got my first job for $93,000. And it was hard to believe. In the beginning, I thought they hired me by mistake. And every single day, I went to work earlier than anyone else because I thought I was going to get fired because I just don't have a degree and a background. But after 3 months, one day I was sitting in my cubicle. My manager, Pete, he tapped my shoulder from the back. He said, Kuzzat, come to my office. And I thought, okay, today's the day. They're going to ask me to leave. The first thing in my mind is like, how am I going to tell my wife? She's going to be disappointed, right? Again, I failed my family. So it was a painful few seconds. I was mentally ready. So he said, have a seat in his office. I sat. He gave me a piece of paper. He said, take a look. And I thought, maybe I'm just going to sign and go. And then I looked at the paper. It says, 90 days performance evaluation, exceeded expectation, 4% increase in salary, and a $2,000 bonus once I signed this paper. And by Friday, I was so happy. That day, I understood I made it. I just want to share with you genuinely, in 2011, I had to work like a dog to make $2,000. In 2012, I got $2,000 as a bonus on top of my salary. That was something that really hard to comprehend. But later on, I understood making money with my labor, with my arms and legs, versus making money with my knowledge, with my problem solving, with coding. I think these are totally different things. The same Kuzzat in 2011 was broke, living paycheck to paycheck, working 80 hours a week and getting nowhere. The same Kuzzat 2012, making $93,000 after 3 months, exceeding expectation, getting promotion, and getting the bonus from their company, right? This true Kuzzat, what made it different was my knowledge, was my skill set. For the first few years, I really genuinely, I felt bad for people like me. Why fathers and mothers, they have to suffer? Why people have to work in the waiter or DoorDash, work in construction? I said, anyone can do this job because once I get into tech, something that I realized is tech industry is a super broad industry. When you say I work for tech or I'm tech professional, it means nothing. Can you imagine if I say I work for aviation industry? What does that mean? Am I pilot? Am I flight attendant? Am I baggage guy? What I'm doing, right? So just like that, in technology, there's lots of field. Quantum computing, for example, machine learning, for example, software development, for example. But I believe by accident, I was able to break into the right place in tech, which is software development engineering test. And what does that mean? Is this, right? When you want to break into tech, there is something called technical barrier to entry. What is barrier to entry? For example, you want to open a hot dog stand. Right, let's say it's going to be $20,000, $5,000 down payment, and you can start a hot dog stand. So the barrier to entry for hot dog stand is $5,000. But if you want to open a coffee shop, probably you're going to have to invest $250,000. For coffee shop, barrier to entry is $250,000. Therefore, when the barrier to entry is low, more people can compete. The barrier to entry is high, less people can compete because very few people will be able to afford $250,000. Just like that, in a tech career, if you don't have any technical background or college degree or computer science degree, the first thing you want to become is going to be data scientist, machine learning engineer, quantum computing engineer. I believe you can do it, but it's just barrier to entry is so high, it's just going to take time. You might have to spend few years to get there. But the thing is this, the strategy should be what is realistic, achievable, and what is not so easy that so many people can compete with you. That's why I believe software development engineering test is one of the most realistic and robust way to break into tech. Now, what does that mean? Software development? Am I become developer? Engineering test. What does that mean? Am I testing? Now, let's talk about this. Who are the software developers? Software developers are the people back in the time, they graduate from computer science degree, they start working, many years experience. Now they know Java, C#, PHP, all these tools. Now they're building applications. Applications means Amazon.com is application. All the software you see on your phones are applications. Somebody developing that applications called developer that literally write code to develop those applications. So I think it's easier to understand what is software developers. Now, what is software testers? Now, software testers' responsibility is test applications that is developed by software developers. For example, in Amazon, there are people who are software developers. They build search functionality. You go to Amazon.com, what do? You search for the product. What if one day you go to Amazon, you search for Apple, you type Apple in the search box, you click search, in the result you see watermelon. Do you need computer science degree to tell me, hey, I search for Apple, in the result I see watermelon? What is wrong with that, right? You don't need a computer science degree to understand that. So now in Amazon, there are developers building search functionality. At the same time, there's software testers. What they do, they're literally using the search functionality like you and me. They will search as well. They will search for Apple. If they see Apple-related result, they will say, okay, this is working fine. But if they search Apple, and the result, if they see watermelon, hammer, Caesar, and they're like, okay, there's something wrong with that, right? So what they do as a software testers is they will take a screenshot, they will write the report to software developers to say, listen, I was searching, the search functionality is not working. I search for Apple, in the result, I see watermelon. Literally, what software testers do? Software testers will use the softwares like you and me. It could be bankofamerica.com, it could be ebay.com, it could be Amazon, it could be any software. Their job is using the software like an end user, means like you and me. Everyday user to use the application. When the normal user sees something wrong with the application, either they don't bother or they will call customer service. Just like that, as software testers, they will also use the application. When they see something wrong, all they do is write a report and send it to developers to ask them to fix it. That is called software testing. So now in this program, what do you do now? You're going to learn Java as if you're going to become software developer. You will have really robust and strong foundation of Java. Once you learn Java, learning C#, learning JavaScript, learning Python is going to be much easier. Can you imagine that your first car you drive is not Toyota Corolla, but for example, a school bus or a commercial truck? If your first driver license is a commercial CDL license, let's say if you can drive school bus, that means you can drive Toyota Corolla, Honda Accord, right? Java is a pretty difficult language, it's object-oriented, a programming language. So when you learn Java, learning other language is going to be much, much, much easier for you. So you're going to learn fundamental Java so good that as if you're going to become a junior developer. Now you're going to learn also software testing as well. Software testing fundamentals. What is functional testing? What is performance testing? What is regression testing? All the testing methodologies that you're going to learn as if you're going to become software testers. What is software development engineering tests? You're going to use Java to automate testing process. And every time you automate one scenario, which is in Amazon, search is one scenario, writing reviews is another scenario, adding into your basket is one scenario, checkout is one scenario, making a payment is another scenario, return, cancel, order is another scenarios. All the scenarios, you might have thousands, sometimes millions of scenarios. Now, as a software development engineer in test, you will use programming language to automate testing process of those scenarios. Every time you automate one scenario, it's going to become one little robot to test application. Imagine what is going to be your value proposition after this program. When you go to market, your value proposition is this. You will need to hire many people as a manual testers. And every single time they execute a test case or scenario, you have to pay them. This is forever. However, my job is automate their process. You pay me, but I'll build you thousands of bots to test the application. Therefore, you don't have to pay this 10 people. Now, in 2008, when I came to the United States, I didn't see any self-checkout in Walmart. Then it was 2 self-checkout, then it's 8, then it's become 16. Now, 80%, 90% of the people are self-checkout, all these grocery stores now. Now, what's the difference? Those cashiers, they're getting paid for $6,000, maybe their health insurance, tax, all the stuff. So there's lots of expenses associated with those people, and they only work 8 hours a day. But those self-checkout in Safeway, in Walmart, they get $0 as salary. So now, if you can automate 80, 90% of your cashiers, as Walmart, you're saving hundreds of millions of dollars. Actually, software test automation is a very similar thing. As an SDET, your job is automating the manual process to save money. Now, at the end, you're not only saving money, you're saving tremendous time for your company. Sometimes speed is the most important thing in the software testing. I would say this program, it is easier to learn for people who have no coding background. At the same time, the value proposition would be so tremendous for the company that when you go to market, companies will be willing to pay you probably 6-figure salary to replace 5-6 manual testers. At the same time, they're going to save tons of time. They're going to speed up their testing process. That is why software development engineering in test is a very realistic way to break into tech. That is why I was able to break into tech. That is why in the past 9 years, we were able to help 12,000 people around the globe to break into tech from scratch. So that is software development engineering in test. So now, something I want to acknowledge is this. Most people would have no problems to watch hours of TikTok videos. The more you scroll, the more time you waste, the dumber you get. That's what's happening for the society. But you are coming here. When everybody's watching TikTok, watching Netflix movies, you're like, you know what? I want to build a better future to myself. Your family at some point will be grateful for your decision, because what transformed me as a person, a refugee came to the United States many years ago, to myself today with the relative success, is the knowledge that I chose to learn. So you're starting the same journey. So I hope that you enjoy. I hope that you will not waste your time on TikTok, on social media, but study this program. Once you finish this 100 videos, when you look back after a few weeks, you will see that, you know what? I've learned a lot. I didn't know what is software development lifecycle. I didn't know what is Java. I didn't know what is code. I didn't know nothing about this. Now, after I finish this free videos, I think I'm totally different. I think I can do it. That is our goal. Now, thank you for choosing to invest your time to build a better version of yourself, while most people wouldn't even bother, and they would rather watch cat videos on TikTok. Enjoy the class. See you next time.